It should be pretty evident by now that I love video games. I've been playing them since I was a kid, I intend on developing them as a career, and, well, I've been making videos about them for years. They're certainly a part of who I am. And for all the topics I've done on different elements of video games, one I've been wanting to do for the longest time is a list on my favorite games in general. Seriously, it's a topic I've had on my mind for well over 3 years, possibly even 4. But due to various reasons, particularly my indecisiveness, I haven't gone through with it. Until now, that is. Either way, there's no need to go through any sort of rules as they really speak for themselves, so on that note, let us commence. Something very important about me when it comes to my gaming taste that you're gonna want to know for the sake of this list is that, above everything a game can provide, what I look for the most in a game is the fun factor. I play video games for entertainment, so naturally, that's gonna be the most important element in my eyes. This is why you won't see me playing as many games that put more of a focus on artistry or deep messages instead of gameplay. Instead, you'll be seeing me playing games like BattleBlock Theater. Now on a gameplay standpoint, BattleBlock Theater is relatively basic. It's a simple puzzle platformer where you have to collect all the gems hidden in a level and then make your way to the exit. But it's everything else in the game that helps make it the blast that it is. The level design, for one, while having the same aesthetic for pretty much the whole game, is all really well done, with each level providing their own unique and at times really challenging puzzles, but never does it get boring or feel unfairly difficult. The weapon system's also a nice touch, with some weapons being useful not only for fighting enemies, but occasionally for solving puzzles or cheesing your way through certain platforming parts if you want to be that guy. And the game just gets that much more fun when you bring a friend along and play through the campaign together, or alternatively compete with each other in amusing battle arena modes. But even with all that in mind, there's still one element above all else in this game that makes it such a blast, and that's the writing. The quips thrown in-game by the game's narrator, voiced by the ever-so-talented Will Stamper, are freaking gold, as are the cutscenes he narrates in between every chapter of the game. Seriously, these cutscenes are by far the best part of the game, and that is saying a lot. All in all, BattleBlock Theater is a really entertaining game, and I'd highly recommend getting it if you and a friend are in need of something fun to do together. Whether your friendship will remain intact or not after playing it, that's a whole different story. If you ask me, every gamer should have what I call a stress reliever game. A game you can always go to whenever you're stressed and frustrated and just need to let it all out. Kinda like the gaming equivalent to screaming into a pillow. And for me, my go-to stress reliever is actually an entire genre of games, that being the hack and slash genre. Particularly hack and slashes where you take out entire armies within a matter of seconds. Games like Dynasty Warriors and its various spin-offs and crossover projects. I don't know why, but slaying hundreds of soldiers in over-the-top flashy combat just oozes with satisfaction for me. And out of all the games of this kind, Sengoku Basara Samurai Heroes is by far my favorite of the bunch. Much like other games of this caliber, it's as simple as you can get. Mash the buttons on your controller until everybody's dead. But oh my, this is some satisfying button mashing, and that sounded a lot less stupid in my head than it did out loud. I mean, yes, at the end of the day, you're basically just moving forward and pressing 1 or 2 buttons over and over again until you beat the stage. But you know what? Watching your character go nuts and taking down an entire army while doing so just makes that so great to do. And hey, if you want a bit more meat in your army-destroying hack-and-slash game, Sengoku Basara Samurai Heroes actually has a pretty intriguing story, focusing on the clash between the peace-seeking Ieyasu Tokugawa and the revenge-seeking Mitsunari Ishida and the war that escalates across Japan because of it. And yeah, it's a generic story for a game based around war, but when this is combined with a crazy cast of characters, like the feudal Japan equivalent to Dante from Devil May Cry, complete with 6 katanas he wields like Wolverine claws, you know this isn't your ordinary feudal Japan war story. A simple but exceedingly fun game to play with a well-written story and a great cast of characters to go with it. What more can you ask for? Hey, remember that time when I was seriously obsessed with Fire Emblem Awakening to the point that I made an entire list dedicated to it? Those were the days. Why am I talking about this like this happened ages ago when it only happened just last year? Whatever. So yeah, Fire Emblem Awakening. A game that I had called my favorite game for almost a solid year, and for very good reason. For one, there's the story, which, looking back at it now, is a really basic storyline, especially for an RPG. But you know what? It gets the job done. And even then, it still has its fair share of strongly written moments, particularly the last few chapters before the game's time jump. Plus, what Awakening lacks in story, it makes up for in character. My, what a lineup of party members Awakening has, ranging from tragic, to creepy, to charming, to adorable, to the overdramatic anime protagonist. It's a pretty great cast of characters to say the least. And while the characters are by far the best element of the game, the gameplay's not too shabby either, taking everything that made previous Fire Emblem games good and expanding on it. Granted, not everything about the gameplay was perfect. For example, Pair-Up was exceedingly broken, but even with that in mind, this game still managed to provide plenty of challenge, especially if you're on Lunatic. And of course, Awakening also introduced North American players to the newcomer-friendly casual mode, which could be seen as a poor inclusion for a lot of older Fire Emblem players, but for scrubs like me, I welcome this with open arms. Besides, at least it isn't Fates' Phoenix mode. So overall, Awakening is still a pretty great game. It may have fallen from the title of my favorite game faster than a certain someone, but my love for this game hasn't completely gone away. I still haven't played Fates yet, so I'm not sure if Awakening will remain on this list once I do play it, but for now, it'll do. Oh boy, this is gonna be interesting. Unless you've been avoiding any and all things Sonic the Hedgehog for the last year or two, which, to be fair, I wouldn't blame you, you probably know how the internet kind of out of nowhere started hating on the Sonic Adventure games, with some people saying they're on Sonic 06 levels of bad, and even some people saying that they're even worse than that. The internet is full of some interesting people, as you can tell. And yeah, I'll fully admit that the Sonic Adventure games really haven't aged well, especially the first one. But even with that in mind, I still can't help but love Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Call it nostalgia community, but I honestly can't find it in myself to hate this game, no matter how much it's aged. As I've said before in other videos, what made Sonic the Hedgehog appealing to me was the fusion of high-speed chaos with platforming, not just one or the other. And Adventure 2 Battle definitely has that in the form of Sonic and Shadow stages, which are by far the best parts of the game. Granted, it also has some other gameplay styles thrown in the mix, but I see them as a nice change of pace, and for the most part, I found these other level types fun. Yep, even the treasure hunting stages I enjoy to a degree. Except for Mad Space. Mad Space is trash. Don't get me wrong, this game is far from perfect. Some of the bosses aren't too great, and a lot of the dialogue, voice acting, and lip syncing are awful.
But looking at it now...
Beautiful. 10 out of 10. But like I said earlier, fun factor is what I look for in a game, and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle definitely has that. And that's not even mentioning the battle mode, which my sisters and I have collected several hours in, and the game's addicting pet simulator in the form of the Chow Guard, which I have also collected several hours in. Again, I will fully admit that this game is seriously flawed, and I can get why a lot of people don't like it. But even then, I still love this game to bits, and I'll probably continue to do so for a long time. Especially now that I have mods installed on my Steam version of the game. Thought the game was fun already? Playing it with mods is a whole different level of fun.
Maria, this is what you wanted, right? This is my promise I made to you.
As a kid, one of my absolute favorite video game genres, alongside platformers, was racing games. I mean, I still love them now, but as a kid, I was practically addicted to these things. While I certainly have a love for street racing games like Cruis'n USA or Burnout, my childhood's experience with racing games consisted more of kart racers, like Crash Team Racing, Diddy Kong Racing, and of course, the Mario Kart series, which is by far my favorite of the Mario Kart spin-offs. When I was younger, I really couldn't pick a favorite Mario Kart game, courtesy of games like Mario Kart 64, Double Dash, and Mario Kart 7. But once Mario Kart 8 came out 2 years ago, there really was no competition left. If you ask me, Mario Kart 8 really does hit almost all the sweet spots that a Mario Kart game has. It's got the core fun gameplay and smooth controls that the series has been nailing for ages, but also brings back and improves on numerous mechanics from previous titles, like the motorcycles from Mario Kart Wii, the kart customization from Mario Kart 7, and the underwater and gliding sections also from Mario Kart 7, while also adding new features like the zero gravity mechanic, which brings an endless amount of possibilities to the table in regards to track design. Speaking of which, this game has such a great lineup of tracks, not just from the new ones, but also from revitalizing some of the series' biggest hits, like Toad's Turnpike, Music Park, Tick-Tock Clock, and Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road, just to name a few. And don't even get me started on the later edition of 200cc, or as I like to call it, the closest we're ever getting to a new F-Zero game. Seriously, I cannot play on any slower speed anymore. It just feels wrong. That being said, this game isn't actually perfect. Baby Rosalina and Pink Gold Peach were kind of wasted character slots, and battle mode could have been handled a bit better. But besides that, Mario Kart 8's got so much to offer that I consider this a necessity to have if you own a Wii U. And to make matters even better, there was even more! Nintendo ended up releasing DLC for the game, adding new playable characters and tracks into the game, including Link from Legend of Zelda as a playable character, and tracks based on the F-Zero series, further supporting my statement of this being our new F-Zero game. And as it turns out, they're intending on releasing more DLC soon, so that's exciting. There's nothing wrong with more Mario Kart. You know, sometimes it's fun to go back to games you played a lot in your childhood to see how well they hold up nowadays. Sure, you'll most likely find that some games from your childhood weren't as good as you remember them being, but there's also a strong chance that some of those games will hold up just as strongly as they did before. However, there is that rare occasion that you return to a game you played and liked into your childhood, and you end up liking it even more now. And such case happened to me after replaying Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest earlier this year. As a kid, I liked this game. Not as much as some other Super Nintendo platformers like Super Mario World, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. But only after my recent playthrough of DKC 2 did I realize how amazing this game truly is. Which really is odd to say about a game where you play as two anthropomorphic monkeys on their quest to save an ape from a band of pirate crocodiles. With a premise like that, I don't think you'd be expecting much. Or at least, not as much as you end up getting. Everything in this game, from the improvements made on DKC 1's mechanics, to the usage of 3D models for the sprites, to the well-crafted level design, to the overabundance of well-hidden secrets, to the near-perfect controls, it's spectacular from start to end. And yeah, it has its bumps on the way, but what journey is a smooth path all the way through? Now I've yet to even mention the beautifully crafted musical work of David Wise in this game. Seriously, Donkey Kong Country 2's soundtrack is definitely one of my favorite soundtracks in anything ever. It just makes an already fantastic game even more fantastic. If you're a fan of the platformer genre and haven't played Donkey Kong Country 2, I first ask what's wrong with you, but I also highly recommend giving this game a whirl. It's by far my favorite 2D platformer, and I think it's pretty easy to see why. Well, time to make a return to the hack and slash genre. Had a feeling that wouldn't take too long. Like I said earlier, hack and slashes really are some of the most satisfying games I've ever played. But while army clearing games like Sengoku Basar or Dynasty Warriors are great, sometimes it's nice to have a bit more variety, a bit more challenge, or overall, for lack of a better term, a bit more meat in a hack and slash. I'm assuming this is why games like God of War and Bayonetta are so popular, but if you ask me, the definitive title of the genre would have to be none other than Devil May Cry 3: Dante's Awakening. Here we have an example of how to improve on a great concept with a sequel. While Devil May Cry 2 took several steps in the wrong direction by draining all the life from Dante's personality, Devil May Cry 3 focuses on a more youthful Dante just as he was starting his demon hunting business. Meaning that instead of giving the silent treatment for the whole game, he instead drops cheesy one-liners and hilarious snarky remarks constantly while also having an absolute field day doing what he does. But the best part is, this stylish mean of demon hunting isn't present in just cutscenes. It's just as prominent in gameplay. The combat in this game is so fast-paced and well-tuned that fighting enemies pretty much never gets boring, no matter how much they come up. Which is helped by the numerous weapons that become accessible to you, which you can switch between mid-combo. Seriously, this mechanic makes Devil May Cry 3 one of the most ridiculously technical games out there. But if being one of the most satisfying hack and slash games wasn't good enough, it's also got some nice set pieces, some really fun boss fights, and quite an intriguing story about the conflict between Dante and his twin brother Virgil, and what escalates because of it. And if all that wasn't good enough, courtesy of the special edition, freaking Virgil was an unlockable character. And despite not having any different levels, he's got new cutscenes, and more importantly, it's somehow even more fun to play as than Dante. I think I've made my case clear enough. Devil May Cry 3 is a masterpiece of a hack and slash, and like I said earlier, the definitive title of the genre, in my opinion. What more can really be said? So I'm not sure if this is the case with all the candidates on my list, but I think it's safe to say that these top 3 are rather predictable. I've talked about and praised the crap out of all 3 of these games on numerous occasions, so apologies if these next 3 segments make me sound like a broken record, but I'll try my hardest not to. And on that note, let's talk about Dust and Elysian Tail yet again. Seriously, I need to stop finding reasons to talk about this game. What is this, the 4th countdown I've made with something Dust related on it? Yeah, as you can tell by that, and the fact that I did a full Let's Play of the game last year, I really like this game, and for good reason, as it hits the mark in so many areas for me. It's got extremely satisfying hack and slash like combat, it's got really well designed levels and puzzles, it's got a simple but very effective storyline with plenty of memorable moments, whether they be humorous, intense, or feelsy, it's got plenty of hidden secrets and extra challenges to keep you coming back for more, it's got a beautifully crafted soundtrack, and, speaking of beautiful, this game may very well have the most gorgeous visuals I've ever seen in a video game. Yeah, it has some generally not very impressive boss fights, with the exception of the final boss, and the Soaring Meadow level definitely drags on more than it should, but even then, the rest of the game makes up for both of these in spades with, well, everything else. And if that weren't enough, get a load of this. Aside from the voice acting, soundtrack, and parts of the lore and world building, Dust and Elysian Tail was made by one guy. Yeah, the game's creator Dean Dodrill did about 90% of the game by himself, and only on a budget of $40,000. It's still really hard to believe that one man with that budget could make such a game pretty much on his own, and have it turn out better than a lot of multi-million-dollar AAA titles that more experienced game developers have churned out. I don't think there's anything else I could really say without sounding too repetitive. I love Dust and Elysian Tail a lot, and I very much look forward to what Dean Dodrill has planned next. And who knows, maybe he'll return to this world in a future game. Only time will tell. So now it's time for a little story. Despite Final Fantasy being my favorite video game franchise, I actually don't have any childhood connections to the series or anything like that. In fact, I didn't even know what Final Fantasy was until like 2008, which was back when the only RPG I'd ever played was Pokemon Diamond. I started getting interested in the series near the start of 2010, and that Christmas, not only did my uncle give me his copy of Final Fantasy VII that he got back when the game first came out, but I also got my PSP, complete with a little game known as Dissidia Final Fantasy. I absolutely loved both games, and I still do, and both of them got me seeking out the other games in the series, but between the two, Dissidia consumed my time much more. Or at least it did until March of 2011, when Dissidia Duodecim came out. If you've ever wanted to see how to take a game and expand on it without it feeling like too much or too little, just look at Dissidia Duodecim. It keeps the elements that made the original Dissidia such a great game, with its unique fighting style that mixes together fighting game and RPG mechanics, its roster of iconic Final Fantasy heroes and villains, and plenty of modes and extras to keep those playtime hours up, but it also includes more to make an even greater experience. More fan-favorite characters with even more variety in playstyle, more chapters in its already pretty good story, ironed out mechanics alongside some new ones like the assist system. Like I said, all additions that made an already complete game even better. Add on a fantastic soundtrack consisting of rearrangements of classic Final Fantasy songs, some really creative arenas pulled straight from the main series titles, and really, all I could ask for that's not already in the game is a proper online feature. Much like with Dust, Dissidia Duodecim is a game I've talked about so much that there's not much else I can add on that I haven't said before. Dissidia Duodecim has remained one of my favorite games ever since the day it came out, and it's easy to see why. It's filled to the brim with content, it's insanely fun, and it helped introduce me to what's now my favorite video game series. Really can't thank it enough. Like I said earlier, the main reason I hadn't done a favorite games list up until this point was mostly because of my indecisiveness. And I don't mean just for the ordering of the lower parts of the list. The title of my favorite game has jumped around so much it's not even funny. As a kid, it was Crash Bandicoot Warped. But then I got into Final Fantasy and Dissidia Duodecim became my favorite. But then I played Fire Emblem Awakening and it became my favorite. But then I replayed Dust and Elysian Tale for my Let's Play and it became my favorite. The title has gone all over the place for me, so picking what would take the top of my list was actually a lot harder than I thought it'd be. However, after thinking about it long and hard, I finally managed to nail down what my favorite game is. And it appears times really haven't changed that much since my childhood. Yep, even with all the other games I've played throughout my years as a gamer, I'd still say Crash Bandicoot Warped is my favorite game. And honestly, I'm surprised it left that spot in the first place. Every time a new game became my favorite game, I'd later on compare it to Warped and come to the conclusion that I preferred Warped. So yeah, with that in mind, it's safe to say that this game really is the title taker for me. And honestly, can you blame me? Warped is by far one of the most well-rounded games I've ever played. And even now, 18 years after its release, it still holds up phenomenally. Exceedingly tight controls, brilliant design about the levels and their aesthetics, tons of fun gameplay styles, a smooth difficulty curve, and while the game may feel short if you just go for the crystals, the inclusion of hidden routes, the time trial challenges, and a secret 6th set of levels just add on to the game's length and overall replayability. Heck, I've been playing this game since I was 4 years old, and I'm still discovering new things about this game to this day. Whether they be minor little tidbits or major things like levels that are inaccessible from the warp room, but instead from other levels. And I've yet to even mention other elements like the incredibly catchy soundtrack or the fantastic lineup of boss fights. Like I said earlier, I honestly don't know why I considered any other game as my favorite. I just love Warped to bits. It may seem like a basic 3D platformer on the surface, and I honestly don't blame you for thinking that, but once you have a chance to play it, you'll definitely see it is really an amazingly fun game. I'm the One-Winged Angel, and to those wondering, yes, I was very much excited when it was announced at E3 2016 that Warped, as well as the first two Crash games, are getting remastered on the PS4. Because not only do I get to play a revamped version of this already awesome game, but it gives me hope in the possibility of the series making its return. Granted, one could argue that announcing a new game at E3 probably would have generated more hype, but hey, it's better than nothing.